Hello, vintage outboard motor fans. This is T-Mike. Out here on Toledo Bend Lake making another video today. Today's video is going to be on the CSF method of troubleshooting your outboard motor. The CSF method. That's compression, spark, and fuel. Alright, so I've made a few videos already on this, and I decided to make another one. I got a motor sent to me here. I actually got 3 of them from Harry's motors. I'm going to take them one at a time and show you how to use the CSF method to make these motor runs. That's all Harry wanted. He didn't want to refurb anything or restore, just get them running. So this is a get them running video. You can use this if your motor breaks down, you have trouble. Start with the basics: compression, spark, and fuel. So if everybody's ready, here we go. All right, so here's Harry's motor number 1. It's a 1967 3 horsepower Evinrude, model number 3706C. So I'm gonna use my CSF method and get it running and show you what I find on the trouble on this. So here's the motor, and here we go. So step number 1 of the CSF method is to check for compression, and sure enough, I've got great compression. 90 on one side on the top, 90 on the bottom. So step number 1 passed. We'll move on to step number 2. I'm going to check for spark. Got my spark tester on it, and going to pull the rope and see what we got. Well, as you can see, we have spark on the top and not on the bottom. No spark on the bottom. Well, now we've come to the part of the video that's going to make an example of how to check for spark problems. So 90% of the motors that are brought to me have a spark problem, either on one side or both sides. So I've developed a method or procedure on how to check for spark problems, and it seems to work. So I'm going to lay it out for you now. There's 5 steps to it. All right. And the first step is going to be to free all the connections. The connections here on the points, the coils. Free up all the connections and put them up in the air so we can measure them. All right. Second part is to measure the wiring. All right. We want to measure the primary coil, secondary coil, and then measure out to the spark plug wire. All right. If we don't get the correct measurements doing that, then that's the trouble. If all that wiring tests out good, then we're going to check that the points are set correctly. Make sure that they open at the proper time, and we're going to use a voltmeter to check that. If all that checks out good, then we're going to clean the points. Here again, I don't know, large percentage of the times all I find is the points are dirty. So we're going to clean the points, all right? And then we're going to put it all back together and check it for spark. If it still doesn't have spark, the 5th step and the final step is to replace the points. Replacing the points could be the problem most of the time. So I'm going to set my camera up and walk you through all these steps if I do it on this motor. Remember, we have spark on the top cylinder and not on the bottom. So I'm going to go through my 5-step procedure and see if we can find the trouble. Here we go. All right, so I have all the leads lifted. This is the top coil, top cylinder. There's the lead that was laid down on this post. Here's the lead that was laid down on the points there. There's the condenser lead. On the bottom cylinder, there's the lead that was laid down there. There's the lead that was laid down on the points. And here's the condenser lead. I have my voltmeter set on ohms. And when I go across the working coil, the top coil, I see 0.7 ohms, which is good. It should be between 1 and 3. I got 0.7. Now I'm going to take my lead and go from there, and I'm going to go from either lead to the end of the coil wire. and I see 3,000 ohms, which is the secondary winding, good all the way out to the coil, to the spark wire. Okay, so now we knew that side was good. Now let's go and check the bottom coil where the spark was bad. I go across the 2 leads of the primary coil and I see 0.7, which is good. Now I'm gonna check from here to the outside of that. I got my screwdriver on it, and I go down into the coil lead and I get no reading. No readings, so that's the problem. The coil lead on the spark plug is either bad, either the spark plug lead is bad or the secondary winding of this coil is bad. So I'm going to take the coil off, bring it in on my shop and do some measurements to see where that spark problem is. Here we go. Alright, I got the magneto off and on my bench, and as I'm inspecting the wiring, look at this wiring on the top. And that was the good side. So I suspect that both sets of wires are bad. I'm going to take both coils off, check the voltage, the readings on the coils, and replace the spark wires, and I think that might solve this problem. Here we go. Okay, got the magneto tore apart, and it was as I suspected. Spark wires are the trouble on both sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and measure the coils, make sure they're good. Go across the primary, and I got 0.7. I'll go across the primary out to the spark lead, which checks the secondary winding, and it's good. I'm gonna move over to the other coil. Primary winding is good, 0.6. Now I'm gonna go out to the spark wire, and I see 3,348 ohms. So both coils are good, spark wires are bad. I'm gonna replace the spark wires now. Well, all right, I got the spark wires changed out. Let's do our testing again on the front coil. Primary winding, 0.6. Come out to the spark lead for the front coil. If I can get to it. And I got 3,000 ohms. That's good. Now we go to the one that was bad. There's the primary winding of the bottom cylinder. Now I'm gonna go look for the spark lead. Take my lead down in there, and I got 3,000 ohms. So that fixed our wiring measurements are all good now. Let's put it back on the magneto and see if we get spark. Alright, I got the magneto back on. Put the rewind starter back on, and looky here. Got spark on both sides. So that was the wire. So now we're going to put some gas to it. Remember, I said compression, spark, and fuel. So we have compression, and now we have spark. Let's see if we have fuel. Alright, so I put gas in the gas tank, and I opened up the valve, replaced this line, and tried to start it, and it wouldn't start. And also it's dripping gas out of the mouth of the carburetor, steady flow. So I get this question a lot, and I always tell everybody that float, when it fills up in the carburetor bowl, it's supposed to stop the inflow of fuel. If fuel is leaking out the front, the float is not working properly. So I know I got problems with the carburetor. Remember, we got compression and we got spark, but we're not getting fuel. So I'm gonna take the carb off and clean it. See what that does. All right, I got the carburetor off. Got my carb kit right here. Carburetor, my chem dip, and my soapy water. After I soak it, I want to show you to make sure this plug right here needs to be knocked out. When you soak it, there's holes behind here that get into all the passageways for cleaning purposes. So the kit has a replacement plug. You just tap it back in. So I'm going to take the carb apart, drop it in the chem dip for 45 minutes, rinse it off in the soapy water, lay it back out, blow it out with air. There's my air compressor. Blow it out with air and put it back together. Here we go. Okay, so I've cleaned this carburetor 3 times and put it on Harry's motor, and it still won't run. Funny part about it is when I spray some 50-to-1 all mix up through the throat and choke it, it runs. So I'm thinking it's a clogged carburetor, and I can't get the venturi here, this piece right here. I can't get the venturi out of it to clean it. I tried everything, it's stuck, and there are the hole passages where the gas is sucked up through the bottom here and then come out through these holes. So I think the clog is in there. So I've taken another carb out of my parts eBay storeroom. I've got it all clean with the chem dip and blowing the air out of it. I got it all cleaned up. I'm gonna put it together, take it outside, and see if it'll work on that motor. If it does, it proves that this clogged venturi is the problem. Alright, so cleaned the carburetor, and that took care of it. She runs great. So this reinforces my rule, the CSF method: compression, spark, and fuel. If you do these 3 things, you can get your motor started. Hope you all enjoyed the video. See y'all next time. Thanks for watching the video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you did, please click on subscribe and tell all your friends about T Mike's Vintage Outboards YouTube channel. Also, I have dozens of links below in the description. You can find my eBay store, all the parts I have in there. You can find my trusted T Mike parts, where I make kits for fuel pump conversions, for your carburetors, for your magnetos and your gear cases. You also have a link for my mail-in repair service, how to send me your parts to repair and send them back to you. Also a link in there for technical consulting if you need some help with your vintage motors. So I love what I do. I love all the videos that you guys have requested for me to make. Keep the requests coming in, and I'll keep making the videos. And remember, always remember, and never forget, here at T Mike's Vintage Outboards, we're doing it one motor at a time.